She was 67. Widowed. Completely alone. But what she did next shocked everyone who knew her. Here's something most people don't want to admit: loneliness isn't just sad. It can be deadly. Scientists have actually put a number on it, and it's higher than most doctors will tell you out loud. So what happens when a 67-year-old widow, sitting in an empty house, decides she's done waiting to feel something again? Stick around. Because where she ended up wasn't anywhere on her radar, until one search at 2 a.m. changed everything. But wait. Before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment "I subscribe" below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. There's a kind of empty that doesn't show up on a death certificate. At 67, 14 months after her husband Robert died, Eleanor was already living inside it. The house was the same. The mail still came. But somewhere between the funeral and her next birthday, she'd stopped existing in any way that mattered to anyone but her. In the UK alone, more than 2 million people over 65 are widowed right now. If you've ever sat in a silent house and felt the walls creep a little closer every single day, this video is for you. Before we get to what Eleanor did next, you need to hear what the research says happens if you don't do anything. There are 3 numbers nobody hands you in a grief pamphlet. We're counting them down to the one that actually changed her life. Number 3. A meta-analysis published in PLOS I, pooling 15 long-term studies on more than 2.2 million people, found something stark. In the first 6 months after losing a spouse, mortality risk jumps by 41%. Even once that initial period passes, it stays elevated, around 14% higher than for married peers. Researchers call it the widowhood effect. It's not poetic. It's measurable. That was Eleanor. Skipping dinner because cooking for one felt pointless. Letting the phone ring out because talking felt like too much effort. Small decisions. They add up faster than you'd think. But number 3 wasn't even the scary one. Number 2 comes from a 2024 review in the journal Aging Clinical and Experimental Research, pulling together 86 separate studies. It broke isolation down into pieces, and the pieces didn't match what most people expect. Loneliness on its own raised mortality risk by about 14%. Living alone, 21%. But social isolation, not just feeling lonely but actually losing your network of people, came in at 35%. That's when Eleanor thought of Frank. Frank lived 2 streets over. Widower, 3 years running. Mowed his lawn every Saturday like clockwork. Waved when you drove past. Everyone in the neighborhood would have told you Frank was doing fine. He wasn't isolated in any dramatic, obvious way. He just stopped expanding. Same 4 walls. Same 1 or 2 faces a week. Same routine that looked like stability from the outside and felt like a slow leak from the inside. Frank did everything that looked right. He just never did the one thing the research says actually matters. That's when things got worse before they got better. Number 1. The number that actually moved Eleanor to act came from a long-running US national study tracking older adults for years. Researchers found that people with the highest loneliness scores were almost twice as likely, 1.96 times, to die within 6 years compared to those with the lowest scores. Not from a disease. From disconnection itself, acting on the body like one. And it isn't just a Western pattern. A separate study using India's national aging data, published in Scientific Reports in 2021, found widowed older adults were 34% more likely to experience depression than their married peers. Different country. Different culture. Same shape of risk. If you've started avoiding mirrors. Skipping showers some days. Making excuses not to see the friends who keep inviting you anyway. Eleanor isn't telling you this to scare you into staying stuck. She recognized every single symptom in herself, and recognizing it was the only reason she changed anything. That's the night she typed something into a search bar she never expected to type. She didn't search grief support groups near me. She'd tried that already. What she typed, half ashamed of herself, was, "Can a 67-year-old widow move abroad alone?" What came up surprised her. Malaysia runs a long-stay residency program called MM2H, Malaysia My Second Home, running continuously since 2002. As it stands now, it's structured into tiers: silver, gold, platinum, and a newer special economic zone option, each with different financial requirements. But here's the detail that stopped her mid-scroll. If you're 50 or older, Malaysia waives the minimum number of days you have to spend in the country each year. Younger applicants need 90 cumulative days. People her age don't. She sat with that for a long time. It felt less like a loophole and more like an invitation. But before she let herself get excited, she had to face the thing that stops almost everyone her age from even trying. Money. Most people assume relocating abroad in your 60s needs a fortune most of us don't have. The real numbers tell a different story. Current cost of living data puts a single retiree living comfortably in Malaysia at around $1,500 a month, rent included. Couples often live well on $2,500. And healthcare, which terrified Eleanor more than rent ever did, runs 50 to 70% cheaper than US prices. A specialist visit costs $20 to $50. A full health screening that runs close to $3,000 back home was quoted to her at under $400. But here's the part most videos like this one skip, because it isn't flattering. Private medical insurance genuinely gets harder and pricier to secure once you're past 65. That's real. If you're seriously considering something like this, get an actual insurance quote before you commit to a visa tier or sign a lease, not after. It's the single most practical thing you can do. Eleanor ran the numbers herself on a legal pad at her kitchen table on a Tuesday night. And when the math actually worked, when she realized she could afford this, she cried. Not from fear this time. From something closer to relief. 26 hours of flights. One small rented apartment. 0 people she knew. The humidity hit her first. It wraps around you like a damp towel the second the airport doors slide open. Then the smell, charcoal and satay smoke drifting up from a street stall at almost midnight, like the whole city ran on a different clock than the one she'd lived by for 40 years. The hum of the train lines below her window became, oddly, the first thing that helped her sleep. For the first 2 weeks, she mostly just existed inside her own apartment, terrified she'd made an enormous mistake. Then a neighbor, a woman maybe 10 years younger, originally from the Netherlands, knocked and invited her to a Tuesday morning Tai Chi group in the condo's communal garden. She almost said no. She's glad she didn't. 14 months later, she has a circle of friends from 5 different countries. They trade language lessons over coffee. They walk to the wet market on Saturdays and argue, lovingly, about which stall has the better mangoes. But the moment that actually changed her wasn't the friends. It was something smaller. It was the first time she cooked a full meal for someone else again. Not for herself, alone, at a table built for 2. For someone else, at a table that suddenly had a reason to be full. That tiny, ordinary act is the exact thing the research keeps circling back to. Not geography. Not climate. Not even the visa. Connection is the variable that actually moves the mortality numbers, the 14%, the 21%, the 35%. Malaysia didn't fix her. It just put her back in proximity to people. Often enough, that connection became possible again. This was never really a story about Kuala Lumpur. It's a story about whether you're willing to do something genuinely uncomfortable, moving, calling first, showing up to the class you feel too old and too awkward for, in order to feel alive again. Eleanor still thinks about Frank sometimes. Still mowing that same lawn, 2 streets over, exactly where she left him. So here's what I actually want to know. Would you move across the world at 67, alone, to feel human again? Or does the comfort of staying put win, even knowing what the research says it costs? And if you know a Frank, someone stuck in the after, doing everything that looks right from the outside, tag him below. Gently. Maybe today's the day he reads this instead of you.